Hello everyone and welcome to the very first episode of Coffee Crime with Doncha. Grab your favorite cup of coffee or a tea, get comfortable and let's get to our first case together. Before I begin, I want to say that this is my very first episode in English, so please be kind to me. English is not my first language, so I apologize in advance if I say something wrong or you will not understand. I also do have a podcast in German and in Slovak, but I decided to do a podcast in English because maybe I will get a wider audience. I know there are tons and tons of podcasts in English covering famous cases, but since I live in Switzerland, I will try to also bring you some cases from the Switzerland and from this area that might be interesting or something new. A little disclaimer, all of the information in this podcast or in this video, if you are watching or listening on YouTube, comes exclusively from official sources and investigative files. However, all other opinions expressed are my own, so please do your own research. Before we begin though, if you enjoy my videos and my podcast, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications and leave a like or a comment. Your support means the world to me. Now let's dive into our very first case together, and this is the unsolved murder of Ana Paula Arruda. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is the case from Switzerland, and I will be, of course, using some German names or parts of the Switzerland. So if you don't understand, please leave a comment and I will explain to you. Now, let's travel back in time to early September 2006. Picture a quiet, crisp Saturday morning in northern Switzerland. The date is September 2nd, 2006. We are in the canton of Basel Landschaft, just a stone's throw away from the vibrant city of Basel. Specifically in a beautiful, dense woodland known as the Allschwil Forest. It's an area filled with the scenic hiking paths, popular among locals who go there to escape the noise of the city, walk their dogs, or go for a morning run. At around 8:15 a.m., a local woman is out for her morning jog. The air is fresh, the forest is peaceful, and everything seems completely normal. But as she runs along a path near an area known as the Senke, which translates to the hollow or the depression, she notices something odd just off the trail, hidden beneath some trees. She stops, takes a closer look, and her heart drops. Lying in the undergrowth is the completely unclothed body of a woman. There are no clothes, no shoes, and no personal belongings anywhere inside. The jogger immediately realizes that something terrible has happened and she calls emergency services. When the police from the Basel Landschaft and forensic teams arrive at the scene, they quickly secure the area. The physical evidence leaves no doubt. This was a homicide. The woman had been killed elsewhere and her body deliberately brought to this quiet spot in the forest and left there. Because of the prompt response and police records, the victim is identified fairly quickly. Her name is Ana Paula Arruda. She was only 31 years old. At first, investigators hoped that identifying the victim so quickly would lead them straight to the killer. But hours turned into days, days into months, and months into years. There was no trace of the perpetrator in the immediate aftermath of the crime. Today, 18 years later, Ana Paula's death remains one of the most mysterious cold cases in Switzerland. Despite recovered DNA evidence, years of dedicated police work, and comprehensive psychological offender profile created by top criminal profilers, her murderer has never been brought to justice. So now, who was Ana Paula Arruda? How did a young woman born thousands of miles away in South America end up murdered in a quiet Swiss forest? Let's take a look at her life and how the tragedy slowly crept into her world. To truly understand this case, we have to look beyond the shocking headline from September 2006 and talk a little bit about who Ana Paula actually was as a person. Ana Paula Arruda was born on June 14, 1975 in Brazil, where she spent her childhood and teenage years. People who knew her described her as a warm person, but her life took a dramatic turn when she was around 19 years old. She met a Swiss man who was visiting or living in Brazil, we don't know. The two fell in love, got married, and in the mid-90s, around 1994 and 1996, Ana Paula made the life-altering decision to leave her homeland and move to Switzerland to build a future in Basel. For a time, things seemed to be going well. She settled into Swiss life, adapted to a new culture, obtained Swiss citizenship, and started a family. Over the years, she became a mother to 4 children, 2 who lived in Brazil and 2 who were born in Switzerland from her marriage. Her Swiss husband came from a respectable, well-to-do family in Basel. However, after the birth of the second child in Switzerland around 2002, the marriage began to fracture. The couple eventually separated, and this breakdown triggered a tragic downward spiral in Ana Paula's life. Following the divorce, Ana Paula was hit with a severe psychological crisis. She was officially diagnosed with schizophrenia. Her mental health rapidly leading to multiple strays in psychiatric clinics. Imagine being thousands of miles away from your birth country, dealing with a marriage breakdown, managing 4 children, and suddenly fighting a severe mental illnesses. I cannot imagine. It was an overwhelming amount of pressure for a young woman in her late 20s. To cope with her immense pain and illness, Ana Paula unfortunately turned to hard drugs, eventually developing a severe addiction to cocaine. This combination of untreated or struggling psychiatric condition and drug completely unraveled her life. She lost her stable home and became homeless in Basel. Without a permanent address, she relied on social workers and guardians who tried to help her manage her day-to-day life. She often crashed at friends' places or temporary shelters, but it was hard. One place she frequently visited was an apartment on Haltigestrasse 4, a location very close to Basel Street sex market. To support her drug addiction, Ana Paula started working as a sex worker on the street, primarily around an area called Clara Mate. On the street, she was known simply as Ana Paula. Her schizophrenia caused her to frequently engage in loud self-dialogues, talking out loud to herself as she walked through the street of Basel. Because of this, she was very well known among locals, shop owners, and passersby in Basel. She stood out not because she was aggressive, but because her vulnerability was very visible. Tragically, as the years went on and her addiction took over, Ana Paula lost regular contact with her children. According to investigators, all she had left of her former life were a few treasured keepsake items and photos of her kids, which she kept closer to her everywhere she go. She was isolated, struggling, and living on the margins of society. What criminologists refer to as high-risk victim because of her lack of social safety net. And on the night of September 1st into the morning of September the 2nd, 2006, that extreme vulnerability put her directly in the path of the predator. Oh my God, you guys, I think this is a very, very, very tragic. Just imagine you had a nice life, now suddenly you lost everything, you do not have a safety home, you don't have your children around, you don't have anything. And that tragic happens. Now, let's look at the last hour's timeline at the crime. Let's reconstruct the timeline of Ana Paula's final hours based on the work done by Basel Landschaft Police and prosecutors. It's Friday evening, September 1st, 2006. Ana Paula is out in Klein Basel on the street prostitution scene around Klaramate offering her services. Later that night, or in the early morning hours of Saturday, September 2nd, she goes to the apartment at the Haltiger Straße 4. This apartment belonged to the acquaintance, a man who was also a part of the local drug scene, and it is served as a spot where Ana Paula and other sex workers could take breaks, rest, or get off the street for a little while. Investigators confirmed that Ana Paula stayed in that apartment during the early morning. At around 6 a.m. on September 2nd, she leaves Haltiger Straße 4 and steps back out onto the street. Why 6 a.m.? In the area of around Basel, 6 a.m. is shift change time at the locals' factories. It was common knowledge in the red light district that early morning shift workers were potential clients. Now, this gives investigators a surprisingly narrow and critical time window. At 6 a.m., Ana Paula is seen alive leaving the building at Haltige Straße 4. At 8 a.m., just 2 hours and 15 minutes later, her body is found in the forest in Allschwil, a 15-minute drive away. This means the crime occurred rapidly between 6 a.m. and roughly 8 a.m. in the morning. What actually happened during those 2 hours? Police believe Ana Paula met a client somewhere near Klaramate shortly after 6 a.m. She likely got into his car. The murder itself did not take place in the forest where she was found. Investigators suspect she was killed inside the vehicle or at an undisclosed private location. The cause of death was determined by forensic pathologists to be severe blunt force applied to her neck, specifically strangulation or manual strangulation, as they reported. There were no obvious signs of a sexual assault on her body, but the circumstances strongly pointed to a crime committed for sexual gratification or violent impulses. After killing her, the murderer took extreme measures to conceal her identity. He completely stripped Ana Paula's body of all clothing and took her personal belongings, her clothes, shoes, bag, and any personal items. None of these items have been found to this day. He then drove her body to the Allschwil Forest, pulled up near the Senke, and dropped her naked body beneath the trees right next to a forest path before driving away into the morning traffic. When the investigation began, a 20-member special task force was immediately established, combining officers from the Basel Landschaft and Basel Stadt. They interviewed over 100 people in the red light scene. Sex workers, despite being intimidated by a murder, cooperated heavily with the police. Early on, several leads emerged. People reported a suspicious man with a short DJ Otzi-style bird walking around with a large white dog. Others mentioned seeing a red car in the area. The police followed every single lead, but none brought the breakthrough they desperately needed and wanted. However, forensic experts managed to secure a major piece of evidence at the crime scene, a male DNA profile. At the time, they ran this DNA through Swiss and international databases, but there was no match. The killer had no prior registered DNA profile in the system. Eventually, as months passed without a match, the active daily leads dried up and the case gradually went cold. But as we'll see in our next segment, cold does not mean forgotten. For over a decade, Ana Paula's file sat in the archives. But in 2019, the Basel Landschaft authorities decided it was time to take a fresh look. They assigned the case to the specialized task force cold case. This team combined through more than 5,700 pages of case files, re-evaluating every piece of evidence using modern forensic technologies, advanced psychological profiling, and updated forensic medicine. To help them understand who could have done this, the Swiss investigators partnered with one of the European premier criminal profiling units, led by renowned chief profiler Alexander Horn. After a deep analysis of physical evidence, the timeline, and the victimology, profiler Alexander Horn and his team presented a detailed offender profile. Here is what the expert concluded about the man who killed Ana Paula Arruda. So first, demographics and age. The perpetrator is male. At the time of the crime in September 2006, he was approximately between 25 and 35 years old. That means today he would be around 40 or 50 years old. Second, geographical knowledge. The killer had intimate local knowledge. He knew the red light district in Klein Basel, and he specifically knew the scheduled Senke area in the Allschwil Forest, a place you wouldn't randomly find unless you were familiar with the region. Furthermore, because Basel sits right at the border of Switzerland, France, and Germany, the offender could reside in Switzerland, in France, but also southern Germany. He may have been a cross-border commuter in 2006. Third, connection to the red light district. The profiler determined that the killer was not a first-time visitor to the street sex market. He frequented the area prior to September 2006 and was likely recognized by other sex workers. It's very possible he had been involved in previous verbal or physical conflicts with prostitutes in Basel. Fourth, post-offense behavior. Right after the murder in September 2006, the killer likely avoided red light district for a period out of fear or anxiety. However, profilers noted that after some time passed, he probably returned to the scene. He may have even stubbornly asked sex workers or other people about Ana Paula or asked if the police had any leads on her murder. Fifth, the vehicle. The killer's car played a central role in committing the crime and transporting the body. Profilers suspect he might have sold or disposed of his car shortly after the murder in the autumn of 2006, mean September or October, specifically to destroy physical evidence like blood, fibers, or DNA. Sixth, psychological profile. This was not an impulse crime or sudden burst of rage. Profilers emphasized that the killer acted with calculation and planning. He selected Ana Paula because she was vulnerable, a high-risk victim with no immediate social safety net or warming system. Taking her clothes shows a high degree of trace consciousness, trying to erase forensic evidence. The profiler describes him as at least average intelligence, deeply manipulative, lacking empathy, and possessing strong psychopathic traits. He likely possessed and consumed violent pornographic material and had dark fantasies about killing women. Yet, despite these violent inner tendencies, the profiler noted that this man likely led a completely normal, quiet, regulated life. He could have had a steady job, good relationship with neighbors, and might have even been in a long-term relationship or marriage at that time. In November 2022, 16 years after the murder, the Swiss authorities launched a massive public appeal based on this profile. They raised the reward for information leading to the killer's capture to 20,000 Swiss francs. The case was also featured on the famous Germany TV show Aktenzeichen XY, ungelost on ZDF, reaching millions of viewers across Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. International notices were also published by the German Federal Criminal Police Office. The police asked the public specific questions. Do you know a man who fit the description in 2006? Did someone you know suddenly sell his car in autumn 2006? Did someone stop visiting the red light district in September 2006, only to return later and ask questions about Ana Paula? Following the broadcast, new tips came in, but as of right now, the killer still remains unidentified. And this brings us to the most recent development in the case, which happened in August 2023. Switzerland officially passed a new law permitting law enforcement to use advanced DNA phenotyping. In the past, crime scene DNA would only be used to compare against known profilers in a database, means one-to-one match. But with DNA phenotyping, scientists can analyze the physical crime scene DNA to predict physical traits of an unknown suspect. This is huge. This technology can tell investigators with a high degree of statistical probability the suspect's eye color, hair color, skin tone, and approximate age. When this law went into effect in 2023, the Basel Landschaft Prosecutor's Office confirmed that they had this technology on the radar for Ana Paula's case, since valid male DNA was secured from the crime scene back in 2006. While officials remain realistic, stating the phenotyping doesn't give you a name but rather makes the haystack smaller, it provides a genuine ray of hope that science may finally close the loop on this cold case. So now let's talk about some subjective analysis and theories regarding this case. When you look at everything presented by the official authorities and the Munich profilers, a chilling picture emerges. Ana Paula was targeted precisely because she was vulnerable. Her mental health struggles, her loud conversations with herself, and her isolation made her an easy target for a predator who wanted to fulfill a sick, dark fantasy without getting caught. Freaking asshole. What strikes me most is the killer's double life. It's terrifying to realize that the man could be living among us today. He'd be in his 40s or 50s now. He might be your quiet neighbor, a colleague at work, or someone's husband. He managed to commit a horrific calculated murder while maintaining a quote-unquote a normal public persona. For me, it's terrifying to imagine that someone, maybe my neighbor, would be a killer. Oh my God. Despite of this all, he thought taking her clothes and dumping her in the forest would make her just another forgotten statistic, but he was wrong. The police haven't forget her. Her community hasn't forgotten her. And by sharing her story today, we make sure that her name is remembered. Ana Paula Arruda was a mother, a daughter, a woman who suffered immense tragedy and mental illness, but who deserved safety, dignity, and justice. Hopefully, and I strongly hope, with the modern DNA, phenotyping, new tips from public, and the 20,000 francs reward still active, the persona responsible will eventually face the full weight of the law. And that brings us to the end of our very first episode of Coffee Crimes with Doncha. Please let me know what you think of this case. Who could be the possible murderer? Is it someone she knew? Is it some stranger who just came, wanted some sex services and then kill her? Let me know in the comments what you think about this case, who could be the potential murderer, and share this episode and maybe we could find this killer together and finally get justice for Ana Paula. Also, if you have any other ideas for other cases, whether missing persons, suspicious deaths, suspicious disappearances, or if you want to leave a feedback in the info box under the podcast or video, you could do so. You will find a link to a form that you can fill out at any time. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today. Also, please stay with me. This was my first episode, so I hope you enjoyed it, and have a nice day. Take care and stay safe, please. And I will see you or hear you in the next episode. Bye for now.